It was a peaceful afternoon in a quiet neighborhood of Chicago. A few residents walked their dogs, enjoying the stillness of the day, and among them was an older black man, dressed in a neat black suit, strolling as if he had no care in the world. His name was Benjamin Harris. At 67, Benjamin had earned respect for his work as a United States Senator, but on this calm afternoon, he looked like any other neighbor out for a walk. Benjamin wasn't thinking about politics or laws as he walked. He had lived in this neighborhood for years, and it had always been a place where everyone felt safe. But safety can be an illusion, and this fateful day was about to prove that. As Benjamin approached a corner, a police cruiser slowly rolled up behind him. The car came to a stop, and Officer Douglas Tilford stepped out. Tilford was a large man, broad-shouldered, with a reputation for being overly aggressive. In this neighborhood, people knew to avoid him whenever possible. He had a history of treating certain residents with more suspicion than others, and today, Benjamin was in his sights. "Hey, you!" Tilford shouted as he walked toward Benjamin, his boots hitting the pavement with force. Benjamin turned to face the officer with his calm expression but curious. "Yes, officer, can I help you?" he asked politely. Tilford, in a harsh way, responded, "What's a guy like you doing in this neighborhood, huh? You look out of place. Drugs? Stolen property?" Benjamin was completely amazed by the officer's rude attitude. He politely responded again, "I live here. Just taking a walk. Is there a problem?" Tilford didn't seem to hear him. His eyes scanned Benjamin from head to toe, searching for something, anything, that would justify his suspicions. "Let me see your ID," he demanded, folding his arms as if daring Benjamin to refuse. Without hesitation, Benjamin reached into his jacket, moving slowly to avoid any unnecessary alarm. He pulled out his wallet and handed over his ID. "Here you go. I'm Senator Benjamin Harris." Tilford barely glanced at the ID. His focus was on Benjamin, and no amount of evidence was going to change that. "Senator, huh? What's a senator doing walking around here? This some kind of scam? You think a fancy title will get you out of trouble?" By now, a few people in the neighborhood had noticed the scene. Some peeked from their windows, while others stood at a distance, watching in silence. One or two pulled out their phones, sensing that this might turn into something serious. Benjamin sighed, his patience thinning. "Officer, I don't want any trouble. I'm just trying to get home." But Tilford wasn't done. He stepped even closer, his hand hovering near his holster. "I've seen plenty of your kind, always thinking you're above the law." "Well, not today." The tension in the air thickened as Tilford's hand inched toward his gun. But Benjamin stood firm, refusing to let the officer's intimidation shake him. He had faced worse in his lifetime, but this was different. This was in his own neighborhood, the place where he was supposed to feel safe. Officer Tilford, however, didn't seem interested in safety. His hand rested on the holster at his hip, fingers brushing the grip of his gun. His eyes never left Benjamin, scanning him like a predator sizing up its prey. "Step back, officer," Benjamin said with a firm voice. He kept his hands visible, knowing all too well how easily these situations could spiral out of control. "I'm not a threat to you," he said. But Tilford's expression darkened, as if Benjamin's calm demeanor only enraged him further. "You think you're smarter than me, huh? Think your fancy suit and your title will get you off easy." He spat the words, stepping closer. By now, a few more neighbors had gathered, cautiously watching from their porches. The scene was unfolding slowly, like a storm building in the distance. Some whispered among themselves, and a couple had their phones out, recording what was happening. "I don't want any trouble, officer," Benjamin repeated. "I've done nothing wrong, and I'm asking you to back down before this gets out of hand." But Tilford wasn't listening. His pride had taken over, and now the idea of stepping down in front of all these people seemed impossible. He had to prove something, both to them and to himself. In one swift motion, he pulled out his gun and pointed it directly at Benjamin. Gasps rippled through the small crowd. The phones recording the scene zoomed in, capturing every second of the dangerous escalation. Benjamin froze, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took a deep breath. His hands stayed where they were, calm and visible. "You don't know who you're dealing with," Tilford hissed, the gun shaking slightly in his grip. "Move and I'll make sure you regret it." The situation had escalated beyond words. Benjamin knew that one wrong move could lead to disaster. Just then, a car rolled up to the scene. It was sleek and black, with government plates. The door opened, and out stepped a tall, sharply dressed man in his 40s. He approached quickly, walking straight toward Officer Tilford without hesitation. "What's going on here?" the man demanded with a deep and authoritative voice. Tilford didn't answer, still focused on Benjamin with the gun in his hand. The officer's pride had him in too deep to back down now. The man flashed a badge with the emblem of the Senate stamped on it. "I'm Special Agent Richard Palmer, assigned to Senator Harris," he said, with a sharp tone. "Put your weapon down immediately." Tilford glanced at the badge, then back at Benjamin. "This man is not a senator," Tilford sputtered, the gun still pointed at Benjamin. "This is some kind of trick." Agent Palmer stepped forward, eyes locked on Tilford. "That man you've got a gun pointed at is Senator Benjamin Harris, and you are dangerously close to making the biggest mistake of your career." He didn't blink as he spoke, his presence completely overshadowing Tilford's. The crowd was dead silent now, the suspense unbearable. Tilford's hands wavered as the weight of the situation began to dawn on him. Still, he didn't lower the gun. His mind was trapped between his pride and the undeniable truth being shoved in his face. Palmer took another step, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You're on camera, Officer Tilford," Palmer said, nodding toward the growing number of onlookers recording the entire scene. "Do you really want to be the man who shot a U.S. senator in broad daylight? I strongly suggest you stand down." For a brief moment, it seemed like Tilford might ignore the warning. His grip tightened on the gun, his knuckles turning white. But something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, a realization that he had gone too far. Slowly, Tilford lowered the gun. The crowd exhaled all at once as Officer Tilford holstered his weapon. Agent Palmer kept his gaze locked on him, not yet willing to trust the officer's change in stance. Meanwhile, Benjamin stood tall, his expression unreadable, though the weight of the moment was not lost on him. "Officer Tilford," Agent Palmer said, "you are relieved of duty. Hand over your badge and weapon." Tilford looked stunned. "What?" "You can't just," he started, but Palmer cut him off with a sharp glance. "You pointed a loaded weapon at a U.S. senator without cause. You will face the full consequences of your actions. Now, hand over your badge." For a moment, Tilford stood frozen, disbelief written across his face. But the presence of the crowd, the cameras, and the firm stance of Agent Palmer left him no choice. Reluctantly, he unclipped his badge and handed it over with a pale face. "You'll regret this," Tilford muttered under his breath, but the words carried no weight. He was defeated, and he knew it. Palmer turned to Benjamin and asked, "Senator Harris, are you all right?" Benjamin nodded. "I'm fine. Thank you, Richard." By now, several more official vehicles had arrived. The police chief himself stepped out of one, hurrying toward the scene. His face was red, a mix of embarrassment and anger. "Senator Harris, I am so sorry. This is unacceptable," he said. "I appreciate your apology, Chief," Benjamin replied calmly. "But this isn't just about me. It's about how certain officers treat people in this country. This should never have happened." The crowd murmured in agreement. Some of them had been victims of similar harassment before. Today, they had witnessed justice in action, but the message was clear. This could have been any one of them. As Tilford was led away, the chief turned to Benjamin. "Rest assured, Senator, there will be an investigation, and Officer Tilford will face the consequences." Benjamin simply nodded, his calm demeanor unchanged. He had faced injustice many times in his career, but today was different. Today, justice had been swift. The onlookers began to disperse, though many continued recording as the once proud officer was driven away. For the neighborhood, this incident would be the talk of the town for weeks, or maybe for months. And this brings us to the end of this story. Thank you for watching till the end. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories. Have a nice day.